Lots in the news this week, including President Trump's declaration that he will execute a more than 20-year-old law that moves the embassy of the United States from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, thereby recognizing Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, something very few nations have done in recent years. That law was passed in 1995 by overwhelming bipartisan votes, 93-5 in the Senate, with only one Democrat voting no, and an equally large number in the House, where over 150 Democrats joined the Republican majority to make it the law of the land. However, there was a little catch in there, namely a waiver provision, which has allowed presidents ever since to claim that waiver, thereby putting off moving the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. But President Trump is going to keep one of his campaign promises, incidentally, a promise made by many others, which was never kept, but keep one of his campaign promises and do that. And in his declaration, he said what to many is very obvious, that it was recognition of reality. The truth of the matter is that Jerusalem has been the capital of Israel for 3,000 years. King David made it so. And it has been the undivided capital of Israel since the Six-Day War more than half a century ago. So the protests you would expect from Hamas, a terrorist organization bent on the destruction of Israel, but you might not expect such loud protests from the American left. The air of hypocrisy there is overwhelming because many of these folks have given both their voice and their votes to declaring Israel's capital to be Jerusalem and to moving our embassy there in the past. So let's see how long the international protests continue, but let's see how long the American left clings to simply being anti-Trump on this one, or so it appears. A lot of other things in the news as well, including the special election in Alabama, which is coming up on Tuesday. President Trump on Friday afternoon, just as we were taping this, was campaigning for Roy Moore in nearby Pensacola, Florida. Now that race is supposed to be neck and neck, but I would venture a guess on this, and I've gotten out of the prediction business, but I will still venture a guess that Roy Moore survives this, largely because Alabama voters, like so many other folks around the country, but more so in Alabama, really resent outside forces coming in and telling them what to do. The question, of course, will then be, what becomes of Roy Moore once he arrives in the Senate, especially given Al Franken's departure, or at least the announcement of his departure earlier this week. And by the way, for those of us that work in the crisis communications business, that speech on the Senate floor was not exactly exhibit one of good crisis management. It was all over the place. It was concessions without admissions, without acknowledgments, with denials, and everything wrapped around and mixed into it. It was a hodgepodge of contrary and contradictory speech and a non-announcement of his actual retirement. Not well handled on Al Franken's part. And there have been a lot of others, but there's some good economic news. Unemployment stats out this week say that unemployment is at a 17-year low. And of course, we've all watched Wall Street as the stock market has gone up and up and up, reaching record highs again this week, largely, it seems, in reaction to the tax reform votes taking place in Washington, D.C. Just think what would have happened with a truly audacious tax reform plan. But the economy is kicking in, it's really beginning to grow, and as we've said all along, the two most important words in domestic policy are economic growth. And let me say, the most important things in foreign policy are doing the right thing. President Trump did that with declaring Jerusalem to be the capital of Israel this week. And that is the best 60-ish seconds of your week.